Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my videos. It is the first video of 2023 and I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna do a little Goodreads Wrapped. I'm gonna be talking about the books that I read this year, my journey with reading this year, my favorite books, some of my least favorite books, some stats, as well as some tips to get started reading. Thank you guys for watching. I have been a little bit inconsistent with video making recently. It's just been busy and I feel like kind of been in a creative rut recently. I have some ideas, I just need to execute them. We'll see how that goes for this next semester coming up, but again, I am graduating this semester, so I do want to share that with you guys, and it is really exciting. There's a lot of really cool things coming up for me. But anyways, getting on into the video. Previous to 2022, I hadn't finished an entire novel since elementary school, maybe. Definitely used Spark Notes all of high school for English. I just didn't have the attention span to read, I thought, because I just couldn't sit still. I made up excuses, and I realized now that it was just because I didn't see a value in doing it, and it felt like a waste of my time. And I felt like I was too busy to sit there for half an hour and read. At the end of my day, I just wanted to go to bed. But when I really thought about it, I spend 3 hours scrolling on TikTok every day, so I definitely have time to read. Another reason that I wanted to start reading was to prep for the MCAT. So if you've seen my videos in the past year, I did write my MCAT. So I did want to read to kind of get started with my journey with that. So much of the MCAT is reading comprehension and reading speed, so I did want to make sure that I was on top of that, and I did know that getting better at reading would help me do better on the MCAT. I did get back into reading and I love it now. I set a goal, so in Goodreads, it's an app that people use to track their books, read book reviews, get recommendations, see what their friends are reading. It's a really good app, really helped with pushing me on my journey. They have a yearly challenge, so you set how many books you want to read. They tell you if you're late or well with your progress for the year. My goal was 12 books. I just wanted to read a book a month. That was my bare minimum, that's how bad it was. I ended up reading 26, actually. I finished my last one on December 30th, and I haven't picked up a new book yet. I did buy it. It's on my e-reader, ready to go for my plane ride back to school tomorrow. According to Goodreads, I read a total of 8,178 pages this year, which is 8,178 pages more than I have read probably in the past 5 years. So that's pretty damn good. I'm just gonna go in order of the books that I read this year, and I'll list them out first and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. But the first book I read was Stephen King, Dr. Sleep. I've always loved thrillers and horror movies, so I thought let's start with a horror book that'll definitely keep me on my toes. I'll definitely want to be flipping the page. It was definitely a hard book to start with. Now that I'm looking at it, it's really silly that I did that, but it did work regardless. So I started with Stephen King, Dr. Sleep, and then I read Things I Learned from Falling, Claire Nelson. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, then Malibu Rising by the same author. Then I read That's Not What Happened by Cody Keplinger. Then I read American Dirt by Janine Cummins. Then I read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Then I read The Maid by Nita Prose. Daisy Jones and the Six, Taylor Jenkins Reid. Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Where the Crawdads Sing, Delia Owens. It Ends With Us, Colleen Hoover. Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. Kitchen by Banana Yashimoto. And then Sourdough by Robin Sloan. Such a Fun Age, Killy Reid. Normal People by Sally Rooney. Verity by Colleen Hoover. The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender. Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zahner. My Year's Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Mostafang. Taylor Jenkins Reid's Carly Soto is back. The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante. November 9th by Colleen Hoover, and then finished with Greenwich Park by Catherine Faulkner. So those were the books I read this year. Definitely some good ones, definitely some random ones in there. Definitely some disappointing ones in there too. But they all kept me with my reading journey, so I'm not mad about any of them. So the longest book that I read this year was actually the first book that I read, like I was saying, Stephen King, Dr. Sleep. Definitely the longest book. I think it was literally 531 pages, whereas the shortest book I read was The Lost Daughter, and that was 140 pages. So definitely weird way to start my reading journey with the longest book I could choose, but it worked. So the most popular book that I read was Where the Crawdads Sing. That one actually got turned to a movie, and I haven't watched it yet. I did hear that it was problematic, so yet to weigh in on that. I do want to watch it. The least popular book that I read was autobiography, and that was The Things I Learned from Falling by Claire Nelson. I'll talk a little bit about that one. A true story about Claire Nelson. She was like hiking alone on this like journey to try and find herself, fell off a cliff, and was literally like legs broken, arms broken in the desert, alone. And it just talks about her journey, what she like thinks she saw, everything she thought about, things she learned while she was trying to survive. And I thought it was really interesting, a little bit more like self-improvement oriented for sure. Fastest book that I read between two, but it was my third and my fourth books of the year. So that was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo as well as Malibu Rising. They were just like really easy reads. I'm sure if you are a reader this year, you've read those ones. But if you want to get into reading, a lot of the Taylor Jenkins reads as well as the Colleen Hoover books are like easy reads to get you started. They are like not always the best quality books, in my opinion. Some of them are a lot better than others. They definitely are like a good way to start. So they are connected within the Taylor Jenkins read universe. That was always a little bit fun too, a little bit of Easter eggs in there. But those one took me 2 days, so like a day and a half each type of thing. Seven Husbands was a very hot book this year, and it's basically about this woman named Evelyn Hugo. She's like a movie star. I don't think she's completely white, so she had like a kind of a different upbringing, but she was definitely presented as white. This woman is trying to write a book about her. It's like an interview. Evelyn Hugo, who's very like mysterious in her later days when this interview is taking place, talks about the 7 husbands that she's had throughout her life and what happened with those husbands, where those husbands took her, that type of stuff. And then Malibu Rising is about this family of kids who live in Malibu. Before it got like really popular, they like learned to surf. One owns the family business because parents are dead slash one is like not around. The dad is like a rock star, and he is one of the 7 husbands, or like one of the men in Evelyn Hugo's storyline. And then it talks about this daughter who's like a model and like a pro surfer, and then there's like a couple younger kids too. Kind of just talks about their life in Malibu, the problems they face because of their like parents and that type of stuff. Both very like easy reads, but I really enjoyed both of them. The slowest book that I read was The Lost Daughter. That was also the shortest book that I read this year. Netflix series actually made about it, and that was directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's actually quite good. Basically, this mother goes on vacation. She meets this Italian family. She kind of just observes them on the beach. Has a lot of flashbacks about how she raised her 2 daughters. She isn't really involved in her daughter's lives anymore. There's something about being a mother she didn't exactly love. She sees one of the women in this family kind of going through a similar thing as her, as like a new daughter, and she connects to this woman, and it's basically her journey with this family and some of the sus things she does to try and like cope with herself. And it's a very like thought-provoking book, especially if you have family trauma. It's just interesting to see how they interact in different points in their life, really. That's my interpretation of the book. I'm not a very critical thinker, so that's what I've got on that. But I'm going to quickly talk about my top 5 fave books this year. So the first 2 I did have, no particular order, was Malibu Rising as well as 7 Husbands, both by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Then there was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Mossfang. Definitely saying that wrong, but that book is basically about this woman who gets this inheritance, trying to be like an artist, gallery type of person, realizes with this inheritance that if she doesn't enjoy doing that, she doesn't have to, and she basically talks to a therapist and lies to her and gets all these drugs to basically sedate herself. It's about her journey, what happens in these like blackout periods that she has, her interactions with like her one friend. It's very like introspective. You get to hear a lot about what's going on in her mind and this like really weird experiment she's doing on herself, and it's very interesting to hear. I really liked the consistency in the character, and really seeing how she thought was really interesting to me. The next one, which I really like, Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. It is written by an Indigenous woman and it's placed in BC as well as the downtown east side. So you get to hear basically stories about five Indigenous children who were sent to residential schools, and you hear about when they were a kid, following into residential schools or escaping to across the border and getting back to Vancouver, or how they end up basically being back on the downtown east side and the struggles that led them there, unfair treatment that they got, how the government obviously is not helping them. It's not a very like preachy book. I think it really just focused on telling stories, and because Michelle Good is Indigenous, of course, I'm sure these stories are very real to a lot of people. So it was really eye-opening. I always hear about, like, obviously residential schools aren't good. You don't hear too much unless you do your own research about like the actual stories and how that happens. People end up in situations like they talk about in the book. A good start to help with your journey in understanding Canadian history more. Obviously not an easy read because there were dark topics, but she did a very good job at making it accessible and really helping the reader not even empathize. Obviously you do end up empathizing with them, but like just understanding how difficult it is for these five Indigenous peoples. Definitely recommend, especially if you do live within Canada. My last favorite book of 2022 was Crying in H Mart. That was written by Michelle Zauner. So she's also Japanese Breakfast. She's a singer, grew up in like Oregon or Washington, and it's basically just an autobiography of her life as an Asian American going on an untraditional career route that looked like for her, being on tour, starting her music journey. She's half, so rejecting the idea of being Asian, what that looked like, how she rejected her mother, her culture, and then she goes through her journey with her mother dying and what she kind of realized through that and what she learned through that process of re-embracing her Asian culture by healing her relationship with her mother. So it was a really good one, quite personal obviously for me. Yeah, just a really good book overall. I just wanted to talk about some of the books that I have on my list for next year. You can definitely follow me on Goodreads. My goal for next year is going to be 30 books. I know I read 26, so it's just like 4 more. I definitely think I can do it, considering I just want to set something reasonable, because if I don't meet it, I know I'm going to be sad, and I will still be able to like push past 30 once I get there. So hopefully that goes on. I do want this trend to continue. It's like about 2.5, 3 books per month, so I think I can do that. Some books that I have on that list is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. That one I've heard is really good. I did just buy it, and it was $18. It's expensive, but I have like transitioned onto an ebook now, so it makes it easier for when I'm like traveling and coming back and forth Vancouver to school. A Little Life. That one is also by an Asian American author. It's by Hanya Yanagihara. And then I also want to read The Cartographers. So Asian American, I believe, Pang Shepherd. Yeah, those are just some of the books on my list that I'll probably be reading first. Everything I Know About Love, Dolly Alderton, It Starts With Us, Colleen Hoover. I want to read it, but I've heard it's bad, but I will read it eventually. Excited for a lot of new reads this year. I quickly wanted to talk about like a quick tip if you want to get back into reading. As I said, not a good reader. I hadn't finished a book since grade 7 at least. What I told myself, because I did want to start reading for 2022 and I successfully did that, I also wanted to get better sleep, so I kind of combined those. Plugging in your phone across the room. So like after I brush my teeth, I pledged to myself, like, the phone is going down, you're gonna get into bed, you're gonna read. Doesn't matter how many pages, just read until you kind of get tired, or like set a time limit if the book is really capturing your attention, and then read and like quiet your mind. Obviously, if you're scrolling on TikTok and your like attention span is changing every 3 seconds, you're not going to be able to go right to bed after that. So reading, focusing on one storyline, slowing your heart rate when you are like reading, turning on like your diffuser, turning the lights out, turning on this like just your reading lamp, definitely helps me get in the mood for like a better sleep, as well as that's when I got like the majority of my reading in. Not often do I pick up a book in the middle of the day. It was a lot of like end of the day reading, and I really liked it that way, and that's how I got into reading. Like definitely, obviously, when I read books in 2 days, I'd be picking it up in the middle of the day. A lot of the times when I would finish a book really fast, I'd come down in the morning and talk to Leia, who was giving me a lot of really good books to read. Be like, I finished it, like, we talk about it, find a buddy to, like, read books together, talk about it, have spoilers. Leia would always come up like, did you cry during that one? And you're like, no, but Leia cries at everything and I don't. Someone to, like, do the journey with is always really exciting. You guys can, like, help each other find books, help, like, recommend or deter each other from good or bad books. But yeah, that is my journey with reading this year. I'm really excited to see what books I end up reading for next year. That will be crazy. Like I said, I switched back onto my e-reader because I am hoping to do a lot of traveling this year, so that will definitely be a really good way to keep up my reading while on the move. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you guys soon, and Happy New Year!